scattered, and back in that context, scattered throughout Pontus, Galatia, Cappadocia, Bithynia. Do you see the connection? Peter is saying this psalm is an exile psalm addressing behavior, ethics, righteousness for people that find themselves in exile in pagan worlds, in pagan lands. It's custom fit, custom made for the people of God. Isn't that amazing? See, if we don't dig a little bit, we're not going to see that. You see, this was very fitting for the Jews of the dispersion or the original diaspora Jews, precisely because they found themselves as exiles in a pagan land away from Jerusalem. And let me see if I can sum all this up, and this is probably one of the longest fill-in-the-blanks I've probably ever put on an outline. I'm going to give you plenty of time to write this one down. Peter understood a very clear connection in application, and we're going to get to the application here in just a few moments, but a very clear connection in application from the original author, David, who was delivered from his fears while in exile in pagan Gath from Jerusalem, to the diaspora Jews, representative of the people of God, tempted to fear while in exile in the pagan Greek Empire from Jerusalem, and finally to the elect exiles of the diaspora, the true children of the kingdom, scattered throughout Pontus, Galatia, Cappadocia, Asia, and Bithynia, tempted to live in fear. Think back through the passage that we've been looking at. How many times has he talked to us about the issue of fear? Tempted to live in fear while in exile from the heavenly Jerusalem, the lasting, eternal city which is above. People, I believe with all of my heart, that is the very reason that Peter places such emphasis on Psalm 34. He sees this divine connection. All the way through, this psalm addresses someone in exile from their kingdom, and in fear because they are living among the pagans. What has he just addressed in verse 9? How to live among pagans righteously. Righteous kingdom living while still here in this kingdom, while in exile or sojourners from our heavenly kingdom. And he said it was a passage used, a psalm used to teach kingdom righteousness back there in the Old Testament, and now it's finding its fullest application in the people of God, the true people of God, in the New Testament. People, if we can learn this key of how the New Testament writers use these passages, it will unlock the New Testament for us. We will begin to understand things that we've never understood before. We will see it in a whole new light. But we've got to dig a little bit. We've got to understand how these passages would have been understood to those people when they read it originally. Our problem is we read the Bible like the authors wrote it in 21st century or 20th century America, and they didn't. They wrote it in first century Rome. And then the Old Testament was written in, way before that, in Israel mainly. You see, we've got to understand the context of these passages to see the flow and to see how it's all connected together and to understand what it is the New Testament writers are actually trying to get us to see. But if we don't dig a little bit, we miss it. So you see, Peter understood this spiritual connection between David, the Jewish diaspora, and then the ones that he called the diaspora, the church, the children of God, dispersed throughout the world. And he said there's a spiritual connection here. And because there is a spiritual connection, these Old Testament passages have a very clear application for the people of God, properly understood. You see, he understood the truths concerning the children of the promise, or we're called the children of the promise, the children of the diaspora, the original Jewish diaspora. Randy's touched on this several times. The true children of Israel, they were called the remnant, or the children of promise. It's the same way that Paul uses the expression over there in Romans chapter 9, verse 27, where he says, and Isaiah cried out concerning Israel, though the number of the sons of Israel be as the sand of the sea, only a remnant of them will be saved. The real children of God. He said they are not all Israel who are of Israel, but it's the children of promise that will be accounted as the seed. You see, the New Testament writers began to understand that it wasn't a matter of national birth as it was God's favor, God's blessing. He had mercy on whom He would have mercy. And that in that whole physical nation of Israel, there was a spiritual nation, a true people of God that had received the favor and the mercy of God, the remnant, the ones that God would protect and see through their troubled times and bring them into His kingdom. And they represented us. They were, if you could use the term, the first fruits of us, the church, the people of God. So we're all connected together. So people, we've got to understand this connection. If I could phrase it this way, Peter used Psalm 34 as a foundation for establishing proper thought and behavior, creating an uninterrupted connection from the ancient Old Testament true children of God, referred to as the remnant, with the New Testament and present children of the kingdom. And that's the reason Psalm 34 was so significant, is because we share like circumstances. Just as they were dispersed, just as David found himself in a pagan land, trying to live among pagans righteously, while he was disconnected, while he was away from his kingdom, and just as the Old Testament children of Israel found themselves dispersed throughout the Greek world, living among pagans while they were separated from their country, we, the children of God today, we need to understand how to live righteously because we're among the pagan world. We are, in a sense, separated from our country right now. We're exiles. We're sojourners. And the principles in Psalm 34 apply to us as well. So let's look then for a few moments at Peter's theological expansion of this Psalm 34 quotation. I told you that he doesn't just leave it alone. He takes it and he stretches it. He makes it to mean more than the original people would have understood it to mean. Now, and we're going to see why he does that. You see, we see a theological development in how Peter uses this psalm. To kind of help us to understand this, look at it from this perspective. David, when he penned this psalm, his deliverance was largely